At 24 years old, I saw a photo of myself standing next to my colleagues and I thought, is that really how I look? I'd already been training for 7 years and I could bench 155 kilos, but I didn't look like how I envisioned. When I first started lifting, I was 60 kilos, 17 years old. And if you're training hard right now and the mirror doesn't match the effort, this video is about the gap that I was stuck in for 7 years and the one decision that got me out of it. I've been a coach for 13 years, had over 100 client transformations. I'm a world champion powerlifter, natural bodybuilder, and it all started from that 60 kilo kid. But this isn't the highlight reel. I'm going to show you the 7 years that I wasted, what actually changed, and what it actually cost me, because the mistakes that I made are most likely the same ones that you're making right now. So why does a 60 kilo kid walk into the gym in the first place? For me, it was a t-shirt. I just got to the age of buying my own clothes, and I remember buying those 3 for £10 shirts out of JD Sports, getting a small, and realized that top was drowning me. Had I just discovered the trend of oversized t-shirts back in 2008? And like most people, how I looked was my main trigger for going to the gym. It wasn't health, it wasn't for sport, it was looks and for girls. So at 17, I started training, and where better to go than a spit and sawdust gym? A gym that had an unwritten hierarchy. I remember finishing school with my mates and we'd bench press before the men arrived, because when they were there, we'd have to get off the bench. We'd rush our sets before the real lifters actually showed up. And I remember very distinctly that there were 2 sets of dumbbells, the red ones, which were the slightly lighter ones, and the heavier set, the black set, the Ivanko ones. Those were the ones that I always hoped that one day I'd be able to lift. And I dreamed about benching 1 plate on each side of the bench press, because when I first started training, the 10 kilos were tiny. We didn't bench with the bumper plates as people do now. The big plate was the 20 kilo plate, and it was my goal to be able to bench at least 1 of those on each side. And by 19, I was already benching 2 of them on each side. And that's 100 kilos for 19 reps. Mission accomplished, right? Or so you would think. Around 18 to 19, I found powerlifting. I was super strong. I was genuinely really good at the sport for whatever reason. And that was the problem. My strength became basically a cover-up. My numbers went up every single month, so I always felt like I was progressing. My mates never lifted, so I always was the fit one. My body had changed from where I started naturally, but I was so much stronger than how I looked. People would look at me in the gym and I could hear them thinking, hey, watch this guy die, because he's going to get absolutely crumbled under this 100 kilo bench. But I benched 155 kilos and I couldn't feel my chest working at all. And by the way, if that's you with any muscle, I've made a whole video on that exact problem, how I finally learned to feel a muscle and how to tell if a body part is genuinely lagging or if you've just never connected with it at all. It's linked below for after this one. And then came that photo at 24, standing next to my bodybuilding colleague, and the physique in my head and the physique that actually was on the camera, they were 2 completely different people. And this is exactly why I'm telling you this right now. My problem was never effort. I never skipped sessions. It was never a consistency thing. It was never a work ethic thing. My problem was that I just didn't know that there was a problem there. The numbers kept telling me that I was making progress. They were making me oblivious for these 7 years. My lifts were going up, but my physique just simply wasn't changing. And somewhere down the line, my goals had slowly shifted from aesthetics to strength. And without realizing, I had problems everywhere. Nutritionally, I had a protein goal, but I never tracked my calories. I ate whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and my genetics and my leverages for strength was what really kept the PBs coming. Because my training was random, around Westside, around the Cube Method, 531 Shaco, all the famous strength programs, and they all worked for me, yet I understood none of them. I was just jumping from program to program, depending on what was popular at the time, on who was the strongest powerlifter and what they were following, and I was just following that. And that's the equivalent of following the new Mr. Olympia's program every single year. I knew the squat, I knew the bench, I knew the deadlift, I memorized movements, the exercises that trained this muscle or that muscle, without really being able to analyze if it really actually did train that muscle. And that's when I hit a plateau. And that was my biggest light bulb moment that has absolutely changed my life. My strength stalled, and my honest thought was, what do I actually jump to next? Who do I now follow? And that question for me was a light bulb, because if that plan was to jump to whatever is next, there really was no plan. It was so random, and it'd always been random. And I had this light bulb moment for whatever reason. So at 24, I did the thing that I'd never really considered. I hired my first coach. And I want to tell you this very clearly because I know exactly how it sounds when you've been training for a long time. Hiring a coach feels like you're admitting that you failed. I thought that I've been doing this for so long, I should know what I'm doing. And it took a while for me to really even break down the ego to accept that perhaps I don't have it all figured out. And that was the single biggest turning point of my 16 years of lifting. And the roadmap that he gave me was almost insultingly simple. Eat more, track it, log every lift, get stronger in the right exercises, push genuinely hard to failure, and repeat it. It wasn't a secret program. It wasn't any magic. It was just really clear direction and someone that was outside of my own head holding me accountable to it. And the proof of it working came very, very fast. I was simply just doing things that I had never done before, the stuff that I've been avoiding this whole time. And thinking back, it seems so simple and glaringly obvious, but I had no idea. And the evidence of it working was that my deadlift actually went from 282.5 kilos to 320 kilos with no powerlifting specific training at all and no powerlifting peaking. It was just building muscle properly for the first time and sticking with nutrition and doing the things that I had been avoiding for such a long time. I did my first bodybuilding show in 2017, and by 2018 and 2019, something happened that honestly meant more than any total that I'd ever accomplished in powerlifting. I started filling out my t-shirt. I went from a medium to then a large to an XL. I remember back to how I started my story and why I started. I was someone who was wearing a small t-shirt. I was a 60 kilo kid. 11 years later, that feeling of I actually made it had truly come to fruition, and it had come full circle. I started to stand next to bodybuilders, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged there. Placed in my first natural show in 2019, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I do have a half decent physique. And it took me about 7 years to really find out that I had this problem, and about 3 years to fix it once someone showed me where I was going wrong. And now comes the part of the story where I'm kind of proud of, but also at the same time, really not. And from 2017 to 2019, I would say I was obsessed. Every meal was prepped. I never missed a session. I was so obsessed that if I had forgotten my intro workout shake that I made, I would drive home. I would go get it and then drive back to the gym. My entire life was scheduled around eating windows between clients. Weekends were built to protect my training program, and I judged people. I genuinely saw anyone less dedicated as weak, and I never saw any of that as a problem at the time. Luckily, I was young. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a mortgage, and that obsession only cost me. But today I'm a father. I have a second child due in October, and I'm still in stage condition. I'm going to be competing soon. I'm natural, and I train fewer hours than I ever did back then. But I didn't find a shortcut. It's just that my methods now have to adapt so that I could prioritize my life and also my lifting at the same time. And that's the true lesson of 16 years. You don't need 7 oblivious years like I did, and you definitely don't need the 3 obsessed ones that I did either. You needed what I needed at 24. Someone outside of your own head to show you the gaps that you simply can't see, to get you to work on the stuff that you've been avoiding or think you've been doing really, really well. So my journey so far was the first 7 years of training really hard and kind of in a way getting nowhere with my aesthetic goals. And it was this one t-shirt that was wearing me at the time that triggered me. And if you lift, I bet my money there's something there that's triggering you too. So if you're somewhat similar to how I was, if your lifts are going up, but the mirror and your physique aren't really changing, it's not that you're lazy and it's not that your genetics aren't the problem. You've probably just got leaks that you just can't see yet, just as I did. So next week, I'm going to be releasing something that I built exactly for this. A 2-minute audit that finds your specific leak, the one thing that's sitting between your effort and your physique. And it took me 7 years to find mine, but it's going to just take you 2 minutes to find yours. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next one. Peace.